Hello again. Today we're looking at the Nikon FA, and this is a starter's guide for new photographers. So if you're lucky enough to have one of these in front of you, first thing to know is it's an electronic camera. It's not a mechanical one. It relies on batteries. And the batteries live in this compartment on the bottom. You need to make sure it's nice and clean in there. If the batteries have been left in the camera, it will be full of sort of green mouldery powder stuff. And in other videos I do cover how to remove that. Basically it's vinegar on a cotton bud or a Q-tip, and it does rely on two LR44s or SR44s. I use SR44s. LR44s don't really have the oomph that cameras need. Back in the day all the batteries were silver, but there seems to be a move towards lithium nowadays, so but either will work. So you put two batteries in there, and it does show you which way round they go, the plus and the minus. And then you just have to put this cover back on. As usual I mess it up. So if you manage to find one of these cameras, or get given one of these cameras, they actually are quite collectible. And they're worth quite a little bit more money than your normal SLRs. Not quite sure why that is. Maybe it's because of the features, but we're not really going to talk about the features today. We're just going to talk about getting started with your first roll of film. So you do this up with a coin, and so that have to be really tight. So now the shutter should fire. This is where you select the shutter speed. Don't worry if you don't know what that means, but as long as this is on one of these numbers, you can push this button and that's the shutter firing. That's it basically taking a picture, but there's no film in the camera. This is how you advance the film, and then you just push down on this button. Before you do that, you need to what they call compose your shot. So you look through this viewfinder, make sure the blind isn't in the way. There is a blind there, but again don't worry about that, just make sure it's out of the way. So you look through, you compose your picture. It isn't autofocus, you have to focus manually, so you can use this lever here to adjust the focus. There are some focusing aids in the middle of the screen which should help you in your focusing. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to put this into program mode. You'll notice here there's P, S, A and M. If you take this dial here and flip it up so that it's in the P mode, that's program mode, so it doesn't matter what this here is set to at all. On each lens you'll find what's called an aperture ring, and this is this ring at the back that adjusts. So if you're going to use it in program mode, you want to set it to the smallest aperture, which is the biggest number. So the biggest number on this lens is 16, 22, so you just move it totally to your right when you're looking from this side and leave it on that. The camera will now do the rest for you. It will set the shutter speed, and it will set the aperture, and it will tell you what they are inside the viewfinder. So now when you fire it, it's going to what we call meter the shot, so it's going to measure the amount of light, and it's going to calculate what settings to use for the right amount of exposure. The only other thing you have to do is get yourself some film. This is a box of 35mm film. Has this writing on it, 100/36. So this has a speed of 100, and it takes 36 shots. So you can take 36 pictures on this roll of film. Called 35mm film, but often referred to by 135. This is a budget black and white negative film. It tells you on there, black and white negative film. 135, which is 35mm, which is what this camera takes. So when you're giving the man your money and you've got your box, you open it up, you'll find a canister inside, which is light tight, and you can open up the back of the camera to load the film. And to do that, on this camera you pull up on this part here, and you'll find it doesn't move. There's a lock here, so if you move that across and then pull this up, pull it up again against the resistance of the spring, and the back will open up, and then you can get into the inside of the camera. Don't touch this part here. The edge is okay, but you don't want to be touching this. This is the actual shutter curtains. This is the bit that opens and exposes the film. So you get your film out of the canister. This is a really stiff canister as well. So this is what a roll of film looks like. This is light tight. You can see this sort of insulation along here, sort of stopping the light from affecting the film that's inside. This is called the leader, this part here. And again, all the information's printed on it. So 135/36, and it's 100 is the speed. You need to remember the speed because that's important. Slots in this way round, with the bit that sticks out goes at the bottom. So that slots in there. And then you're going to gently pull some of the leader across. So this is what film looks like. The light sensitive coating is on this side. So there you can see this is ruined now because this has been exposed to the light. And then this is the side that it's going to move on to wind on. So when you pull this bit of leader out, you're then going to insert that into these sprockets over on this side. So you'll see the slots in there, and this just goes into those slots. And you want to make sure that the sprockets line up, and you'll find the camera will grab the film and start to pull it across. So what I do is I push this down now, and you'll see it's got a little fold out crank on it. And if you wind this around, you can take the slack up so that the film is reasonably tight. Don't do it too much. And you can see that the film's been grabbed by this, and it's on the sprockets because that's what the holes are for. That's what moves the film through the camera. If you close the back up, on the top you've got a thing called a frame counter, which is this one up here. When you open the back it resets to S, which is start. So what we do now is we advance the film via the shutter, advance the film again. You'll notice this one is turning, which shows you that the film is actually moving through the camera. You've loaded it correctly. And then you do this until you get to number 1. So the next one is going to be shot number 1. You can close that part up. The last thing you have to do is just to set the speed of the film around here. Now you'll notice on this collar there's a red dot. You can lift up. I can zoom you in a little bit actually, makes life a bit clearer. You can lift up this ring and it will turn, and the red dot will move, so you need to line up the red dot so that it's next to the 100, because that's the speed of the film. That tells the camera how sensitive the film is. So you line that up like so, so the red dot is next to the indicated film speed. Don't worry about this part here, you can learn that later, that's for exposure compensation. Basically then you're good to go. This camera turns off by pushing this in common with a lot of Nikons. Pulling the advance lever out slightly tends to power up the meter and get everything working. And there you go, you're ready to take your first shot. Hold the camera steady. It will indicate the shutter speed in the top of the viewfinder, which I very much doubt you're going to be able to see that on this. There's a little LCD screen up on the top, and that will show you the shutter speed. As long as it's faster than about a 50th of a second, you should be okay. And away you go. When you've finished, and you got to the end of the film, you'll feel resistance, and the frame counter will be at 36, maybe 37. 38 if you're really lucky. So then you've got to get this film that's been exposed, that's over here, back into that light tight container. Do not open the back until you've done this part. On the bottom you'll notice there's this little lever down here. Push that up and that disengages the drive for moving the film forward. You can then lift up this crank and wind in the direction of the arrow, and you'll feel that you're actually winding the film back. So the film is now moving that way, back into that light tight container as you wind it back, and then you'll feel at a certain point it gets easier. So that means that it's come off of the sprockets on this side. And again, push the lock up, pull that lever up, and there's your film. As you can see, it's been wound right to the end of the film again. You can keep winding and wind this part in by process at home, so I always like to leave it out. It makes it easier in the processing stage. Lift this bit up, take your film out, pop it back into the light tight container. The advantage of winding it all the way in is that you know it's been exposed. Back into there, put the lid on, and then that needs to go now. Is it going to focus or not? That goes for processing. And from a negative film you'll get usually a scan onto a CD. In the old days you used to actually get physical prints, which you still can of course, but in this day and age everything's really a computer file. So there you go folks, that's how you get started and use the Nikon FA in a very simple fashion. I'm not going to go through all the controls and everything in the history in this video. This is really just to get people started. If you're lucky enough to find yourself in possession of a Nikon FA, don't worry about what all these other buttons do. They're not vital to start taking images. Most film cameras are pretty similar. This one's a bit unusual and it's got the program mode. But yep, that's the video for today folks. It's a short one. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comments, queries, questions, etc. down below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.